Order, order, 27, order, here we go, on the road, 27, order,
You are listening to Voices from the Diaspora.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another version of Voices from the Diaspora. Today we're celebrating African Liberation Day, May 25th, 2013. It actually coincides with the 50th anniversary of the establishment of the OAU, which is now called the AU African Union. I have on the line with me from Freetown the head of SLAJ, the Sierra Leone Association of Journalists, Mr. Kelvin Lewis, who recently got elected to the position. Mr. Lewis also works for a local newspaper, and being a man in the know of things and in the flow of things also, I believe the African Liberation Day means something to each and every journalist across Africa. Mr. Lewis, welcome to Voices from the Diaspora again.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. First of all, let me wish you a happy African Liberation Day today.
Yeah, the same to you and all your listeners.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have, well, first of all, one thing I've noticed is you guys, on your newspaper, I noticed a portrait of, or photograph of Thomas Sankara talking about African Liberation Day. What is the significance of Sankara on the Awoko news paper, the online version as well as the paper version? What does that mean to the newspaper, and what does it mean to, what's the overall picture as far as the Pan-Africanism is concerned?
Yeah, well, perhaps I'll tell you why we chose Sankara. Long ago, the Ethiopian historian Abdurrahman Babu, he wrote in one of his articles in, I think it was Concord, the Concord magazine back then, and he was talking about the new generation of African leaders who would come and not come for money and not come for fame, but who would be interested in uplifting their people. And he spoke about this new breed beginning with Jerry Rawlings, and it was followed by Sankara. But for us, we saw Sankara moving far ahead of Rawlings, because Sankara actually transformed his people, changed the name of the country, and he was such a modest guy. There are times he used to ride bicycles in the streets and that sort of thing, and he was really in touch with his people. But sadly, I mean, the Charles Taylor and the other guy, they ended up in killing him. But we were touched by the work that Sankara was doing in Burkina Faso, and so we adopted him as our own icon.
Okay, that's a very fascinating explanation on that, and I'm also very I follow the story of Sankara. I'm an admirer of him as well. A powerful press is essential in the liberation of societies and even continents. How liberated do you think the Sierra Leone press is to achieve this goal? Talking about liberation, African Liberation Day. How can we tie that in with liberation in Sierra Leone? I mean, with respect to the press being at the vanguard of such a movement.
Well, what I'll say about the press and generally the country, part of what some of us believe, some of us older guys believe, is the reason why we have not progressed politically is because there hasn't been real deep-seated political education in Sierra Leone. If you've gone to Ghana, you've spoken with Ghanaians, you would know that Kwame Nkrumah succeeded in getting the Ghanaians to be politically minded, to be politically educated, and they have their deep-seated political convictions. Now, if you also go to Guinea, you would see that kind of thing, and you would understand why, even though people look at Guinea as less developed than Sierra Leone, but when you go to Guinea, and some of us were there during the interregnum, we had to run away from Sierra Leone, and when you spoke to the Guineans, you would know that as soon as any external threat comes into Guinea, when you're talking with any Guinean, when there is any external thoughts coming in, you would see them close together and they become Guinean right through and through. We haven't got that kind of political education in Sierra Leone. If you go to Guinea, it will be very difficult for you as a foreigner to put a Guinean in jail. In Sierra Leone, the foreigners are taken on top. So for me, there's that lacking in real political education and political commitment, political consciousness. And it is not only in the press, it is everywhere. So the press as it is, you cannot expect them to rise above what the rest of the country is. And that is why you would not find the real deep-seated political conversation going on. You would hear the political conversation going on about APC and SLPP, but take it out into the African context, and there are very few people who would be able to contribute with that. So that is the situation here, and like I say, it's disappointing, but then that is what it is.
Okay. So what is the press doing in terms of educating the society, conscientizing them about about Pan-Africanism, not in what we'll call backyard, revolutionary movement or whatever, but in actual sense of conscientizing them in terms of actually appraising their knowledge about what Pan-Africanism means for the country as a whole, and what Pan-Africanism can do for Sierra Leone as a whole. What is the press doing in Sierra Leone towards that?
Well, a year ago, we lost somebody who was at the forefront of that, and that was Olu Godin. He was in the forefront of preaching Pan-Africanism. Now, you would also see that the issue of Pan-Africanism has been tainted by the rebel war, by the REF movement, by Mr. Fode Sanko. And so it is not something which is seen as proper. There is some reaction to it now. When you talk about Pan-Africanism, people think a little bit negative about it because the rebels came, and when they came initially, there were some very strong Pan-Africanists, guys who we knew from the days in Frobe College and at Jala, who were in the forefront of that rebel movement. And when they came, their initial preachings were for Pan-Africanism and all of that, and sounding all the revolutionary jargon. And these guys, the end product is that the REF became something else. So Pan-Africanism is now seen as too radical. But yet still, some people in the press are still trying to preach it out, are still trying to bring forward the truth about Pan-Africanism. And people are still trying to say that at least, the African continent has to move on in terms of like the OAU into United Africa. The debate was on. The Gaddafi stuff again is also, also served to tint the picture a bit. But like I said, the main message is still there. But what the press in Sierra Leone is doing to push that forward, I would say very little, and I'm being very honest, because that debate is not on the table right now. Very few, in fact, if newspapers were coming out today, you would see very few newspapers talking about the significance of this day. People mark this day as the day that Johnny Paul Nkrumah took over, and that is what is clear in Sierra Leoneans' mind. It is not so much the African Liberation Day. It's still being, of course, PANAFRO, the Pan-African Union, they're still going to celebrate it today. But for the majority of Sierra Leoneans, the significance of this day is that in 1978, Johnny Paul, this was the day that Johnny Paul chose to take over, the government, to overthrow the government of Tijan Kaba,
Yes.
So that is the picture that is playing around this day for most Sierra Leoneans, who are stationed here in the country now. Okay.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the African Union. The African Union is 50 years old as well. What do you think of its achievements so far? And what do you think is the relevance of African Liberation Day to the African Union as a whole?
I think it's hugely significant, and given that we're celebrating 50 years today, it's a hugely significant day, and it's a day that should be marked with a retrospective look at what has been achieved over the years. Now, for me personally, the dream of the founding fathers is still far from being achieved. I don't see Africa as being united and as moving forward to that confederal unity very soon. Because for me, there is still this question of sub-Saharan Africa, with the North trying to look as if they are Arab, and the rest of Black Africa seeing themselves as one. And the conflict in between, look at the conflict in Sudan, look at what is happening in the Great Lakes region, look at what is happening with Rwanda and Congo and that sort of thing, and with Uganda. You're looking at African neighbors having a hand in destabilizing their neighbors. All for some sort of political gain. I don't know whether their actual aim is superiority or whatever. But it tells me that the dream of achieving African unity as the founding fathers envisioned it, is far from being achieved. We also look at the economic aspects, as Nkrumah said, seek ye first the political kingdom and all others will come. When you look at the economical aspects, we're still fighting, even in West Africa, to have a common currency. East Africa, they were also trying to come forward with a common currency. But all of these ideas started long before the Europeans thought of having the euro. Yet still the Europeans have achieved that, and we're still fighting to harmonize our economies to be able to have a single currency. So the retrospective look for me is not, I would say, it is not favorable. It is not favorable. And I think well, probably we'll be seeing a new breed of leaders coming on.